Great. Well, so good to be here. I will introduce myself and then, over to the thought leaders on this topic. So I'm Nandini. I lead global digital health at Sanofi. That involves, looking at all of the ways technology-enabled care can improve healthcare services and really, empowering patients and providers to better manage care. Love the topic for today. I think, it's a really interesting time to be having this conversation. HCP needs and preferences, ever-changing. On the other hand, pharma access to HCPs is reducing, and you could argue that's been the case for a while. But what makes this really interesting is, the explosion of, data and AI to inform personalization and to do it at the point of care, which is why this is, a really important time to be having this conversation, and looking forward to hearing from thought leaders. We'll let you introduce yourselves.
Maybe I can start. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sylvia Schneiders. I'm Director of Marketing of Halozyme. Responsible brand leader for Xiostat, our testosterone enanthate product. Very nice to meet you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kamya Elawadi. I'm Chief Client Officer at DoCare. Bring back some advertising and experience and work on a lot of HCP focused marketing.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jack Manley. I work at Viz.ai. Viz is a health tech, and we build customized AI-enabled workflow products for healthcare professionals to use at the point of care.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lori Holland-Hancock. I work for a Merck & Company, and I lead a team of digital strategists for channel strategy and engagement for the U.S. market for Merck Oncology.
Good morning, everyone. This is Gunjan Agarwal. I work for Novartis, and I'm responsible for data strategy and digital marketing data solutions.
Thank you all. Let's jump in. So my first question is fairly broad, and I might direct it to you, Sylvia. It's about personalization and messaging. What critical factors would you say go into thinking about how to deliver really tailored messaging for HCPs, and why is this so important?
Yeah, no, thank you. So let's first start by saying that when we talk about personalization in the context of HCP marketing, we're talking about a fundamental shift in how we engage with these stakeholders. So we've heard personalization during different sessions. It can be a buzzword, it can be a trend word, but actually as marketers is a true strategic approach that address the unique needs, the challenges, and the preferences of the HCPs. So we've seen personalization, and I've seen it evolving in my career and how it changed throughout the years. Obviously, I know Jack will talk more about how AI, automation, machine learning can really enhance personalization, but we're shifting basically to a one-size-fits-all. I also like to call it carpet bombing personalization and messaging, to a more nuanced strategic approach that again address all the challenges, all the needs, and the preferences of HCPs. One thing I wanted to say before getting into the different factors that I consider for personalization is what, as marketer, I think about the advantages of tailored and specific messages and how I can sell quote unquote to our leadership team on the whys. And my main why is the enhance of the communication that we can provide to HCPs. So whenever we tailor that communication to the needs of the HCP and to their daily routines, that communication becomes much more effective and engages with them at a deeper level. Therefore, the HCP will find the messaging more useful to them. The second thing that I think about is the trust and credibility. So trust and credibility is very important because once the HCP perceives that we understand what their practice's challenges are, they understand what that we think through when putting out a messaging, then they tend to trust our product more, and they tend to give some more value and resource to the messaging. And the last part that specifically from Halozyme as a medium pharma is resource allocation. So whenever we are doing personalized messaging, we're making sure that every dollar that we spend is targeting the right ACP. And specifically in medium pharma, where budgets are not unlimited, let's say, I need to say that it's very important that we use the correct resource allocation, and personalization and targeting allows us to do that and show the results of, whatever the goal of the campaign we want to achieve. In terms of factors of personalization, when I was thinking about this panel, I like to divide it into two main buckets. And at one, it would be the more traditional buckets, and the other one is the innovative buckets. The traditional ones and the innovative ones work together from my perspective. And with traditional ones, we're thinking through the specialties, for example. Different specialties have different needs, private practice versus hospital or versus academic institution. These are more the traditional thinking that we have with targeting and personalization. The second thing is, which kind of stage is the ACP in? We're talking about residents, medical students versus a more experienced and veteran ACP, such as a KOL or a rising star. So the way we communicate to them is different. And the last thing is thinking through their RXing, how they prescribe products. So their tendency to prescribe competitors, to generic versus branded. What do we learn about those specific ACPs? And I like to think about those traditional factors merged into the more innovative one that we have at our disposal. So digital behavior and how do they interact with their digital tools. So whether the journals, whether the websites that they're visiting, what is their preference within these needs. So this is the first part with their digital consumption that we need to understand about the ACP. The second would be not just what they visit, but how do they consume these content? So do they have a preference with videos, with different banners, with different long form articles? So we understand what their real needs are, and we want to make sure that our messages hits home whenever they're looking at them. And in my thinking, when we merge all these factors, traditional and the innovative one, we kind of create a digital ID, if you want to say, a passport for our ACP. So we have per NPI all these data, all this matrix that can be created as a scorecard, and therefore it helps us to deliver a personalized message with potentially different contents that evolves with time and in real time. We're listening a lot of what other panelists are saying about this. So to me, that's the winning part of personalization.
Thanks, Sylvia. That was very comprehensive, and love that framework. Jack, anything to add as the physician in the room?
Yeah, no, I think that was incredibly comprehensive. So I'll add the much heard narrative of a physician. So, I'm sure everybody in this room has heard this, but when you are on your feet all day, you're incredibly busy, you simply don't have time to come back to a clinic and go through hundreds of emails and hundreds of epic messages. And it's embarrassing to admit to an audience like this, but when I would finish my shift work, often pharma outreach or pharma sort of communications were the first to be deleted. And I think as an industry we've changed. We've added that additional layer of personalization. We've added that contextualization. And to that point, my latter years I was an avid user of Doximity, and I remember the banner ads there, they were personalized to me, to my surgical specialty, and I would click through and it would be entirely relevant. So I think we're making a tremendous amount of progress. What I will say though is that there is incremental value by double clicking one layer down, right? And by that I mean truly sort of understanding exactly what are the pain points that a clinician is facing in their day-to-day job, what exact workflow are they trying to solve for. And it's something that we at Viz are incredibly interested in because we're building products that solve for those specific challenges. And what we've found over the last 4 or 5 years is that if you build a product that is trying to solve a problem for a physician, they're engaged in that product. And that gives you this opportunity to add surround sound in terms of educational content, above brand sort of guideline education, and it can be incrementally valuable for them and drive further impact.
Just to add a little bit here, I think personalization when we are doing towards an HCP is really, really valuable and important. And if we can take one more additional step towards making it personalization messages which are more relevant to the physician and patient conversation that they are having at the moment, I think that just is a perfect head start for making it more and more customization, because digital fatigue is increasing. There's so much content which is available for consumption on daily basis, which is just going to get bigger and broader and further increase more and more. If that personalization content is to the HCP level, it's great. But if we can go ahead and make it more personalized to the patient, which is sitting in front of it, in front of the HCP, I think that's just an additional step of making it perfect to that level.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good segue to I think where we're going in this conversation. But first before that, so we talked about personalization and messaging. If we can focus a little bit on channels here, right? So yeah, HCP needs preferences ever changing around channels, wide variance in preferences, in-person, digital, physical. How are you all thinking about the channel mix in your efforts? And I might direct that to Lori and Kamya to start with.
So when I think about the channel mix and everything the panel has talked about today, one of the biggest things that was mentioned is the evolution of MPI targeting, which happened several years ago, which give you the ability to understand your customers, where they're going and what they like. And as you start to accumulate a database of that helps you with your personalization. And so you have to move the organization in a couple of places. The first is, if you're MPI targeting, you kind of have to figure out what the mix is of your mass media and targeted media. And over time, you may find yourself on the more targeted sides, because that's where you're going to actually find the customer that has the patients that you're trying to connect with. The other thing within your channel strategy, I would take it beyond a distribution strategy. It's a way to connect your brand story to the customer. And over time, to think about, I think over time we started to just put messages in the marketplace because we could figure out where the physician was going, whether it's Doximity or Medscape or wherever, email. But now it's, how do you not just put a message in front of that customer at the right time in the right channel, how do you connect them to your story? And then how do you move them along an adoption continuum based on their behaviors and their beliefs? Because that's really important, that you're taking the data and marrying it back to your channel strategy. The last, another thing that I would say is, in your channel strategy, consider how do you push the envelope beyond your traditional channels. And when you think about pushing the envelope, if anything, COVID fast-forwarded professional as well as personal opportunities of where physicians decided they were going to evolve to in their evolution, in their learning journey. They were no longer in just the traditional channels of email. There were the Doximities, there were other channels. Social became important, and community groups started to come together so that they can learn. So moving your organization to newer channels is also important, so that you can test and learn those channels and add them as ingredients as you start to scale and pilot. So when you think about your channel mix, it's, where are my physicians? What's the story I can tell them in those channels, not just messages? How do I make myself relevant and resonate and break through the clutter of those channels and make sure that it's also impactful back to the organization? So that's a really important when you think about channel strategy and how you're going to engage customers. The data will also help you optimize how do you go to market in those channels, so that you aren't having to delete all of the emails out of the inbox at the end of the day. But there are signals in your data that tell you, I'm doing too much or too little. And listen to those signals, optimize in flight, and then make course corrections and changes. understand where you can grow. And this may not be the popular thing to say but as you started to learn where your customers wanted to be, they may or may not want to go to a centralized website of a pharma company. You can determine that. But if you want to be personalized and you want to have a good channel strategy, then you need to drive them to where they want to be, which may include your website as well as other opportunities in the ecosystem with your third-party partners.
Well said. Yeah, Gunjan, if I could, all things data and AI would be great.
Yeah, just before that, I'll add to Laurie's point. She raised a very good thing that whether it's a mass strategy or the targeted marketing which we should do, make it more effective, we need to create a brand archetype. What is we are talking about? What's the prevalence of that disease? Is it a rare disease? And for a particular brand, what is the mode of administration, mode of formulation, distribution strategy, competitive edge? Actually, with all this combination can help us understand whether we need to go for targeted messaging or the mass media. So in parallel, as Laurie mentioned, the data can help us in creating those brand archetypes and then mapping with a marketing strategy. It will make it more effective.
One more thing to add is when you're doing any of these strategies, we tend to put our brand in the middle, and I would recommend put the customer in the middle. And I've had the opportunity to work on a product that has over 40 indications, and so when you have that experience of having a product that has a big breadth, you start to understand that there's one customer, and you really have to think of what is that customer experience you're trying to make with that customer across your brand story. And so when you put the customer in the center, you will make different segmentation choices. You will make different channel strategy choices as well, as long as that customer is forefront, and the brand will benefit from that as you tweak that.
Yeah, I think I love the fact that you just mentioned that we have to focus on customer centricity. It just put three things in my mind when you were talking about it. Content that's relevant for that customer, channel, and the cadence, so that we are not over delivering any message, or whatever we are delivering is relevant. As Jack mentioned, that when there's something which is more relevant, contextual, it's more important for HCP to consume, and they are more open to receiving those messages. I think that's really critical point.
Yeah, and pulling on the thread of the recent availability of data to really inform across content, channel, and cadence. Gunjan, any further comments on how you're leveraging real-time data and AI to do this? I know you did make some comments earlier, but any further thoughts?
Yeah, Nandini, in your question, you used some of the buzzwords, right? Like real-time, personalization, AI. What I would always start with, what is the need of it? What we are trying to do? Are we trying to force fit the pharma industry with the other industries where we need everything real-time? Do you think, is it similar to the shopping experience where there is an email you receive and then you add it to the cart? That's not how it works. So first, the most important part is do we really need the real-time data? What exactly we need real-time? We are marching towards something which is maybe not relevant. So having an end goal which is a patient care and having it upfront is very important. So instead of the real time, if you look at, we need to understand the behavior of an HCP, capture the signals. The signals can come from the real time, near real time, or the data with a lag. That absolutely fine. As long as you are connecting the data set, capturing those signals, creating that algorithm, trend algorithm, that's the most important part. If you look at the industry trend, the IDNs are forming. In those IDNs, the decision is no longer with only one HCP. It's a within account, it's a group of HCPs who are taking a decision. Now making it personalization for HCP, can it be effective? Yes, to certain brands, to certain disease areas. But what is more required is making it more relevant for that HCP, because they are part of a bigger group. So I would move from real time to the trend analysis, and then from the personalization to the more relevant. And now coming to the AI should not be a chapstick which applied everywhere. Okay, AI should be very focused. as we talk about the data, the signals capture, that's where AI definitely can help, because there is a lot of data, there is a churn happening, you need the quick answers, you need to create those movement archetypes and have to understand what is more relevant for them. So this is how I would say shift from real time to exactly what you need to help the HCP to get a more relevant message and use AI to deliver the right message for the HCP for the better patient care.
Great. Sticking with channels, right? I'm always, endlessly interested in how, point of care and how AI, to use the buzzword, but I think, AI for care delivery is kind of, here to stay to some extent, right? So how HCPs are using AI in their workflows and their decision-making processes, and how we, what opportunities this presents for us at pharma to influence this process at the point of care. Jack, I think this might be right up your alley to take the first pass at.
Absolutely, I'm the buzzword guy. So I think you said it. AI is here to stay, and I think if we look at the facts, right, 3 in 5, so over 60% of U.S. health institutions are now already using AI in sort of clinical workflows. If I look internally at our company's data, we have 1,600 hospitals now who are actually using our AI-powered workflow products, and about 50,000 HCPs who are using it in their day-to-day activities. So it's here, and then to your point, when you look at the data, year-on-year growth is expected, so it's here to stay. So what does that mean for us in industry? Well, I think there are two ways to look at it. On the one hand, we can catastrophize, and we can say, okay, this is changing the way we can have impact with more traditional engagement tactics, like using field force or using sales reps, using traditional marketing communications. But the flip side of that is we can look at it through the lens of this is a huge opportunity. We can actually use these new channels, these sort of novel engagement channels, to sort of really enhance our messaging. And I think to your point, about channel mix, I think there's a way to flip the paradigm and add this into sort of the way that we think about channel mix. At Viz, one of the we've been working in this area now for a long time. And one example, just to highlight sort of how we can think about this, is we've been working with one of the largest pharma companies on a very rare cardiac disease. And hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, for those who don't know, about 85% of patients are actually undiagnosed, right? They're sitting out there, they're symptomatic, they just can't get to the right specialist. And so what we did in collaboration with pharma is we built a product that used AI. It sort of acted on ECG data, something which is ubiquitous for most patients. And we've been able to boost the amount of patients that are diagnosed. We've been able to get them to the right specialist. And ultimately, we've been able to get them to the right treatment. And what this practically means is, from a pharma perspective, is you can sort of add the surround sound. You could add all the information that you need in a workflow product like this to sort of further drive the messaging that you want to deliver. So I think AI is an incredible sort of opportunity, and I think it's like, to your point, it's here to stay.
And just adding to a little bit on that further, I think not just it gives you an opportunity to present the right messages at right time when you are sitting in front of the right patient. I think it also gives you an opportunity to ease out, understand the data that's being collected. We were talking about how real-time or close to real-time data may not be required, but I feel that part, that AI support system, helping HCP to identify the right data, I think that support system is really critical for performing a lot of tasks and making it easier on day-to-day, making it lighter to understand and consume the data which is more relevant at the moment.
And I think to add to that, I'm excited for what you just described, is how to use AI in certain systems. And earlier yesterday, we saw 2 companies present health intelligence and how they're leveraging AI differently in their specific platforms and apps. And if you can use that and partner with those parties and use your AI orchestration, that could be pretty powerful in the future for surround sound, but making sure that you also have the right message in your story ready to support where that physician is in their treatment paradigm with that patient. And so that opens up a lot of different opportunities that I think we're on the cusp of trying to do. We're not quite there yet, but I think we're at the forefront and trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and we are also missing a lot of data like clinical concepts in unstructured, which are like EHR, HCP notes. It do get captured in the EHR systems, but that's where the AI can help. It's a huge data set, and with a high precision and accuracy to capture the data, then integrate with the other, can really help in the better patient care.
Yeah, just to add on to that, because like I think that is such a I mean, we can spend hours talking about that, but you know, some of the stuff that we're seeing with NLP to actually get out that sort of unstructured data fields from clinical notes is astounding. It's something that we're you know, investing heavily in as a company. But the other thing I wanted to say on your point as well was around this sort of, okay, you're in the EHR, you have got hundreds of notes, you have hundreds of lab values, and how do you pull out what is relevant? And again, you know, AI can like synthesize it and boil it down to say, okay, I'm seeing a cardiac patient. Do I need to know that they fractured their little toe 5 years ago? No, I don't. Let's remove that from the record. And it can boil it down into something that is very, very succinct so that I can, in a snapshot, see exactly what is relevant to the person that is sitting in front of me.
Yeah, and you know, pushing the discussion around, you know, AI and workflows here, so clearly, you know, as you said, it's here to stay. What can we within pharma do to enable this movement here? Any thoughts on this question?
I think to your point earlier about point of care and the overall AI, the first thing that comes to mind with recent experience as a pharma marketer is compliance. So I think we all know that our legal teams and our compliance teams are working hard to make sure that we use AI in a compliant way, but it's still evolving, and we still need to make sure we partner with them early on whenever we want to adopt any tactic that involves AI and ensure it's regulated, it's compliant, and it's 100% safe for the company. The second thing about point of care that you were saying is I've seen a lot of success with point of care and the involvement of AI within what Jack was saying, you know, the charts and how it's cleaned up. I like to say cleaned up whatever information is not relevant, understand if the therapeutic option that the patient is currently on is useful for the ACP and our product, merge it together, and then the outcome would bring a messaging that is on point from the ACP perspective. Then at the same time, when you are working at a point of care from an ACP perspective in the EHR and you have a patient walking in that already you've seen during the check-in process an ad about your product, maybe he's already on therapy or he's on a competitive therapy and he's seen an ad asking the product by name, then I think that's when you will have a great success, just because the ACP is in the right mind, the consumer, the patient is asking for it, and you know, the generation of a script is potentially at a higher chance than just using one channel. And I know here we're focusing on ACP, but we all know as marketers that whenever we can make sure we orchestrate all these different channels together, we can definitely achieve a much higher success rate with that.
Right. Any other thoughts on this important question?
Yeah, I will add, apart from the compliance, which is the key, also prioritize your use cases, because you want to start with AI use cases which are high impactful, and then from there get the approvals from the ERCs and all the compliance team and implement. So that will also boost your morale that yes, AI is effective in the areas in the pharma industry.
I would add, as well as a systems capability in EHR, as well as other opportunities, AI has endless, I feel like endless possibilities. So we started with next best action years ago, orchestration engines, that's AI, right? It's AI modeling is predictive. How does that become more predictive? How do you connect it to the opportunity to use AI to generate maybe content in the future a little bit faster so that we can get more real time and more personalized based on all the data that we have? As we said earlier, go through the MLR process faster and get it into the market and quickly optimize and change based on needs. I think it can also help us think about how do you segment to be more specific as far as micro-segmenting, and then helping us understand what's the profiles and things of that physician before you even go to market. And then helping us sort through unstructured as well as structured data to make decisions faster. So I think there's a whole ecosystem that we haven't tapped into yet from an AI perspective that's exciting and challenging and will change the way that we work in just a few years, and we'll be different marketers because you're going to need to know how to pull and synthesize all that together, and AI will help you synthesize it hopefully in the future.
Well said. Yeah, we've spent a lot of time talking about AI in workflows, point of care decision making, but to your point, there's a lot of other use cases that have shown kind of real and immediate value, especially around content generation.
And I would add to that adherence opportunity models, so patients don't fall off therapy, you can predict, so kind of connecting the physician and the patient in a way that we've never done before as well would be important in the future.
All right, that brings me to my last question, and then we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. So to sum it all up, right, around focusing on context and timing here. Context really matters. Being able to deliver the right message at the right time. I think a great example is just before a patient shows up or right after the patient leaves that office visit. Right? How are you thinking about bringing this all together and delivering contextually relevant education and engagement to HCPs? I know a lot of this was covered, but any closing comments on this topic?
I think a lot is dependent on what kind of data we are assessing and using when we are delivering or planning or thinking about any message or channel selection. I think a lot depends on the accuracy and the cleanliness of that data. If the data is coming through precisely from the moment defining what is the right relevant diagnosis or right relevant patient type, what really is important for that patient type. That patient type might need some sort of co-pay support, some sort of financial aid. So a lot of those things really play an important factor when it comes to personalization, when it comes to the use of AI, when it comes to use of segmentations as we are talking about. I think for marketers, we should, as a marketer, we should think about getting into personalization space is much easier than we think because we can always go from one to many to finally reaching it to one-to-one stage of personalization. Getting started is an important part, which we might have done in certain extent, as Laurie mentioned that next best action has been here from a very long time, but how many of us has really started using it? What level and what implementations we have really done, be it on HCP side or patient side. I think getting started is the key to moving the needle. Yeah.
Jack, I feel like you might have something to say on the topic of context with the fractured toe example.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that is I think that sort of summarizes it very well. I guess from our side, I think innovative collaborations I think are a great example about how you can drive things like next best action, put it into clinical practice. I think to your point, I think next best action, we've been talking about this for almost a decade now. I mean, I remember the first sort of McKinsey article that I read about this was almost 10 years ago now, and still to this day we haven't quite necessarily nailed it. And I think the collaborative partnerships where you do have companies who are sort of like building products that are in physicians' hands or in clinicians' hands, I should say, I think those represent an incredible opportunity to actually drive that final delivery of a message at one of the most critical times. So that would just be just an add-on to the point you made.
So I have maybe a slightly different point of view. Sorry. I believe there are companies who are pretty far in their journey on next best action or next best engagement, whatever you want to call it, and have started to crack the code on how to use that. And then there's a spectrum of companies that are still in their learning journey. And then from there, what I would say is using the power, it takes big organizational shifts and change in order to get AI in any area of your company, whether it's an engine, whether it's designing and building for MLR. That's going to be a big organizational change mindset and shift. And making sure you have the sponsorship around AI in an organization is going to be important so that you can transform them into the next evolution of marketing. From there, I would say we keep hearing right customer, right channel, right message, right time. I think that's where you start. But once you become comfortable in how you can use these technologies, because there's more than one, I think we have to think about evolving that to more of the who, what, when, where, and how. So I say, who's the right customer? Where's the right story? Where's the right channel? What's the experience you're trying to create in that channel? Because each channel has a voice. And you want to make sure you're talking to the customer personalized, not just from a story perspective, but in the channel voice. And then making sure you're timely. It's going to take more than just our in-house capabilities. So I believe partnerships are going to be really important with digital publishers or third-party partners to help us get there, because no organization can get there alone. And that evolution will be, I think, a game changer for the industry moving forward. So leveraging all of those pieces of information and putting it together to make it work for your organization is important.
Thank you, Lori. We do have a couple minutes left. Would love to take your questions. No one? Yeah.
Great comprehensive view of what we should be doing and what the current state of the market looks like. Ultimately, you have budget, right? Maybe not for you, for the brand that you work on, but thank you. So, think back to, the drugs or the brands or situations where you've worked on very limited budgets, and you need to do everything that everyone talked about here. Could you think or talk about what that process is like and how those prioritizations are made? I know some of it's fairly obvious, but where would you start and how would you end up?
So it's a great question. I have worked in areas that have very limited budgets. And what I would say is the data becomes really important. That's where it becomes very important to be very targeted and focused for the brand or indication of what you're trying and who you're trying to target. So I would think about how much mass media do I really need, because it's probably small, and then how can I focus on targeted media. I think it becomes critically important to look through the data and say, where is my customer? Not just from a reach perspective, but an engagement perspective. And I'll go a step further, is to work with your publishers on how active they are in that space. Because the activation is, I haven't found too many, and I have very, very good friends in here who are publishers and partners. They can usually reach, but the question is, how active is your customer in their platform? Because that becomes, and how frequent? Because then your dollar's going to go further. You can optimize, and I think that will be helpful. And where are you going to get the most, I won't say bang for your dollar, but that's what's coming to mind, but where are you going to get the most impact for your dollar and engage the customer? And then how do you stretch it, I guess, is what I would say. So Maybe there are certain platforms where the cost will give you 30 or 60 days in that platform. So that stretches your opportunity, your time and space in that area. And it's the most impactful channels that's going to return on your investment. So when you have a smaller budget, I think there's a bit of creativity and art and science to it, but think about who are my channel choices where I'm going to make the most impact, and I would focus there. Yeah.
Any follow-ups? No? Okay, great. Well, we closed just on time, so I think it's quite clear that the possibilities are quite endless across what pharma is already doing in-house, and also the possibilities through partnering with emerging platforms, such as those at this table. So again, thank you all for the discussion, and yeah, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.